Hello, today I want to talk to you about mixing greys. It's a very important part of my printing. I use grey a lot and I want to show you mixing opaque greys and mixing transparent greys using extender. So I'm using traditional oil-based inks here, and basically everybody knows that if you add black to white you get a grey. So here is a grey that I've mixed up using just black and white, and if I pop some on my paper you can see it is indeed grey, but it's actually quite a dead grey. There's not a lot to it, it's quite a flat colour. There are times when you might want that kind of completely flat plain grey, but my usual go-to for mixing greys is actually blue and brown, and I tend to favour Prussian blue and burnt umber. Prussian blue, I love, this is Prussian blue, and I do love the shade of Prussian blue, but I'm also quite sentimental about it because it's a big factor in traditional Japanese woodblock. It was the first synthetic colour to reach Japan, and it features quite a lot in woodblocks. So I'm kind of fond of it for that reason, because I do Japanese woodblock printing. But if I mix sort of about equal quantities of it with, I've got some burnt umber here, and I'm just going to add that and start mixing. Now, I can't see what's going on there very well, so my usual test is either to get a little bit of it and smear it onto some paper so that I can see what's going on, and that does look reasonably neutral. But for camera I'm going to show you it with a little bit of white, so if I just get a little white ink here, then I can take some of my neutral mix there. And that's why I have a lot of palette knives, because I make a terrible mess with palette knives. I'm always mixing. Now you can see there it's a grey, it's a bit blue at the moment, so let's just, I'll show you a little bit of, if I add, the more brown I add, the more neutral it's going to go. You can see it's tipping towards neutral there. But it's a more complicated and a livelier grey than the black and white. I'll put that down there. It has a sort of bluey quality to it. So if you want a really neutral grey, then ultramarine is quite a good colour for that. I've just put some down here, and if I pinch a bit of that brown, it will give me a more neutral, flatter sort of grey. It's still an interesting grey, but it's a flatter version of the Prussian blue, so let's pinch a bit of white. There we go. So hopefully you can see that's a kind of more neutral colour. Now, mixing it with white to make the grey it's not my favourite thing to do. It kind of kills greys. Where greys really come into their own, or these greys mixed with blues come into their own, is when they're transparent, and that's how I use them. I very, very rarely mix them with white. That was really so that you could just get an idea of what I was doing there. So let me just move that out of the way for the moment. What I'm going to use is extender to show you the kind of beauty of greys when they're transparent. So extender it's like ink with no colour in it, and I've talked about it in previous films. In my first series of films, which on YouTube are called the Self-Isolation series, on social media it's Lino with Laura, I have quite a nice episode on extender. But for now, I'm just going to pop it out here so that I can mix some greys into it and show you. Here's my neutral grey. And the more extender I add to it, the more transparent it will become. So if I take my extender here upside down. Let's take, that's what I'm looking for. This is the Prussian blue mix. And I add that into it. Let me put those onto paper so that you can see. And these are, for a landscape artist like me, these are great because they're beautiful for skies and things like that, but they're also great for shadows. And I often will print a solid colour and then lay down a transparent shadow on top of it. So if I spread that out a bit more, you can see that these are lovely greys. If I just get some black, let's grab a bit of the black and some extender. To make a grey, you can do that too if you want. For me, it's not as interesting a grey. It's quite a flat sort of grey. And of course, if you're mixing your greys from, I mean, I always use blues and browns. I know you can mix greys from other colours as well. You can tip them. You can warm them up. You can add other colours to them. You can tip them. With the burnt umber, and the Prussian blue, if you add more burnt umber it goes greener. If you add more blue it will go obviously bluer, and you can sort of balance the kind of colour you get. You can put a spot of red into it. Let's do that. I'm running out of palette knives. There's a little bit of red, so you can add spot of red and tip it into a more sort of dove grey. Okay. Colour. So, because I like rain and I like English, well, British landscapes I should say, because a lot of mine are up in Scotland, greys are quite important. So you see here I've tipped it into this sort of very dove grey kind of colour with the red. And you can get an infinite range of greys, and I depend on them a lot. So if you look at my work, you'll see, and you start really looking, you'll see just how much grey there is on it. So it's a good idea that you know how to make greys that are quite lively, and the more transparent, if you tip towards sort of using transparency to make them paler rather than white ink to make them paler, I think you get a livelier feel to them. But you know, again, that's just me, and you may feel completely differently. But hopefully this has given you a bit of insight into how I approach these. And when we print up the little prints that I've been working on, I'm going to be using transparent greys in some of them to lay down shadows and stuff like that. So we will look at those again, and also at the use of extender again. I hope that's been useful, and I hope you'll join me again for another video.